You think it's fear. Predators fight back, so early humans learn to leave them alone, and that caution calcified into a rule. Wrong. The real reason is older than fear, and it's still running inside you right now, deciding what looks edible before you've thought about it. Here's the scene that proves fear was never the answer. 40 feet below you, a lion is dead in the dirt. 6 spears did it, and it cost someone blood. A torn shoulder on the hunter kneeling closest to the body. Nothing about that animal can hurt anyone now, and every hunter standing over it already knows, without a word passing between them, that it's not getting eaten. Not tonight, not ever. If fear were the reason, this is the exact moment fear should collapse. The threat is gone. Every other predator on Earth eats what it just killed without hesitation. A hyena doesn't pause over a downed leopard. A crocodile doesn't think twice about another crocodile. Humans don't eat this. Not once. Across every continent, every era anthropologists have studied. Notice, too, what's happening around that carcass instead. Someone is already field dressing the antelope carcass from yesterday's hunt. 40 feet further down the slope without a trace of the same hesitation. Same spears, same hands, same hunger. The lion gets walked past. So something else is deciding. It took 4 invisible processes to build that refusal, and none of them have anything to do with the fight that just happened on this ridge. The last one is the strangest, and it's still active in you today. Start with the mathematical one. The math never worked. In 1942, ecologist Raymond Lindemann measured something nobody had properly quantified before. How much usable energy survives the jump from one link of a food chain to the next. His answer, now taught in every introductory ecology course, is roughly 10%. The other 90 burns off as body heat, digestion, and the physical cost of the chase itself. Run the conversion forward. 100 pounds of grass grows roughly 10 pounds of antelope. 10 pounds of antelope grows about 1 pound of lion. That carcass on the ridge isn't just an animal. It's 100 pounds of sunlight and grass, compressed through a wasteful 3-step chain, into a single pound of usable meat. Pound for pound, it's the most expensive meal on the entire landscape, and it took the same 6 spears it would take to drop an antelope carrying 10 times the yield. Herbivores solved this problem for free. A gazelle converts grass directly into muscle. No intermediate steps, no energy lost to a chain of predation above it. A lion has already paid that 10% tax twice before a human ever gets near it. Modern agriculture runs on the same math and prices it accordingly. It takes roughly 6 pounds of grain to produce 1 pound of beef, and beef sits near the top of the price list at any grocery store precisely because of that ratio. Scale that same ratio up one more trophic step, to an animal that eats animals that eat animals, and the price per pound stops being expensive. It becomes absurd. Reason 1 then, predator meat was almost never worth the hunt. That's also the least dangerous item on this entire list. The next one can kill you without you ever tasting anything wrong. Picture a bald eagle that never touched a drop of pesticide in its life, dying anyway. A small fish absorbs a trace of mercury from the water it swims in. Not enough to harm it, barely measurable. That trace doesn't leave its body. It waits for something bigger to eat it. A larger fish eats 10 of those small fish and inherits 10 traces at once, concentrated into a single body. A bird eats several of those larger fish across a season. Repeat that climb for years across an entire ecosystem, and you get concentrations that never existed anywhere in the original water. In 1966, researcher Charles Worster traced exactly this collapse through eagles, ospreys, and pelicans along the Great Lakes and the eastern seaboard. Decades of DDT sprayed on farmland nowhere near these birds had stacked up through everything beneath them on the food chain. The chemical interfered with calcium metabolism so severely that eggshells thinned until they cracked under the simple weight of a mother sitting on her own nest. Nesting pairs of bald eagles in the lower 48 states dropped under 1,000 before the federal ban finally arrived in 1970. This isn't an isolated case from a single decade. In the 1950s, a chemical plant in Minamata, Japan, released methyl mercury into the bay, and the fish absorbed it exactly like Worster's fish did. The people who ate the most fish, often the highest consumers of the largest, oldest, most predatory catch in the bay, developed severe neurological damage. Over 2,000 victims were eventually certified in a disaster that gave the world its modern name for the entire phenomenon, Minamata disease. The mechanism is identical whether the top of the chain is a bird or a person. A predator's body isn't just meat, it's a lifetime ledger of everything smaller it ever ate. Eat low on a food chain and you inherit one meal's worth of exposure. Eat high and you inherit everything that animal accumulated across its entire life. One organ concentrates that inheritance so severely it can kill a healthy adult human in under 72 hours, and it doesn't need mercury, DDT, or any factory chemical to do it. It only needs the animal's own liver, doing exactly what a liver is built to do. Arctic hunting cultures with zero contact between them, different continents, different languages, thousands of miles and centuries apart, arrived independently at one identical law: never eat a predator's liver. Sled dogs refuse it too, even while starving, turning their heads from meat they'd otherwise devour. In 1911, a group of Antarctic explorers, out of food and desperate, broke that rule and ate liver from one of their own sled dogs. Within 3 days, their skin was peeling off in sheets, and their skulls felt, in their own recorded words, like they were splitting apart from the inside. One of them did not survive it. Nothing external caused that. A predator's liver naturally hoards an extreme concentration of vitamin A, built up over years of that predator eating the livers of other animals in turn, each meal adding another layer of concentration on top of the last. A single serving can deliver a dose that overwhelms human calcium regulation and skin cell turnover outright, a condition doctors now call hypervitaminosis A. The body's normal storage system, built to hold onto a nutrient it can't manufacture itself, simply has no mechanism for a dose that large arriving all at once, and the excess doesn't pass through harmlessly the way water-soluble vitamins do. It attacks the tissue that stores it. Polar explorers still get warned about this today, specifically about seal and polar bear liver, in expedition briefings written a century after that 1911 death. 3 mechanisms deep, and every one of them was completely invisible to the person standing over the kill. No lab existed on that ice, or on the savannah either. No one could see mercury or measure vitamin A concentration. Yet cultures with no contact whatsoever landed on the same conclusion anyway. One mechanism remains, and it's the strangest, because it doesn't even require the animal to have been dangerous, only sick. Predators disproportionately kill the sick, the old, and the slow, the easiest targets in any herd, which means every parasite riding inside those weaker animals doesn't die with them. It travels straight up the food chain, right along with the meat. Trichinella is the best documented case, a parasite that lives directly in the muscle tissue of carnivores. It's a major reason bear meat, one of the few predator meats humans historically did eat, always got cooked until nothing survived in it. Not medium rare, cooked through every time because the risk was too well understood to gamble on. A second passenger can't be cooked out at all because it was never alive to begin with. Prions are misfolded proteins with no DNA and no cell walls for heat to destroy. A single misfolded prion forces healthy proteins near it to fold the same broken way, slowly wrecking brain tissue over months or years, with no cure at any stage of that process. One of the most devastating documented outbreaks in human history hit the 4 people of Papua New Guinea, tied to a mourning ritual involving the tissue of deceased relatives, a disease called kuru. Understanding it took researchers years of dangerous fieldwork and eventually won a Nobel Prize, decades after people had already died from it. The same protein family later caused mad cow disease in cattle fed the remains of other cattle. Proof this isn't a one-time anomaly, but a mechanism that reappears anywhere the rule gets broken. Fire kills bacteria. A prion doesn't notice fire happened. Toxoplasma gondii adds a third passenger, and it doesn't even need a predator kill to spread, only a predator's gut. The parasite can only complete its full reproductive cycle inside a feline host, which is why it evolved a genuinely strange trick. Infected rodents lose their fear of cat scent, wander into the open, and get eaten, carrying the parasite straight into the next cat. Humans who eat undercooked meat from an infected intermediate host can pick it up too, and in rare cases, it crosses into brain tissue, exactly where a parasite that manipulates rodent behavior probably shouldn't be trusted to stay put. 4 reasons now, discovered independently by people on different continents who understood none of the science behind any of them. Expensive, toxic, occasionally lethal within days, and immune to cooking entirely no matter how long the fire burns. So who was actually making the call on that ridge? It was never the hunter, standing there in the moment. It was thousands of hunters before him. And the ones among them who felt nothing wrong about eating that meat simply didn't survive long enough to raise children who'd inherit the same indifference. Psychologist Paul Rosen spent decades studying this exact aversion and found it already present in young children with no teaching involved, filed by the brain in the same category as rot or decay, triggering the same facial expression of disgust across every culture he tested. You didn't learn to be disgusted by predator meat. You're descended from the only branch of your family tree that already was. Rosen tested this directly with a simple experiment. He asked people to rate how willing they'd be to drink apple juice that had briefly touched a sterilized dead cockroach. No bacteria, no actual contamination, nothing a lab could detect as dangerous. Almost everyone refused anyway. The disgust response doesn't wait for evidence. It fires off a rejection first and lets reasoning catch up later, if it bothers to catch up at all. That's the same circuitry standing over the lion. Once that feeling existed widely enough, cultures wrote it directly into law. Ancient Hebrew dietary codes ban birds of prey by name: eagles, vultures, hawks, listed individually in Leviticus, alongside a broader rule reserving land animals to those that chew cud and have a split hoof, which quietly excludes every carnivore in one stroke. Early Islamic dietary law bans anything that hunts with fangs or talons, an almost identical line drawn by a completely separate tradition on a different continent, centuries later. Hindu dietary tradition places carnivorous animals in the lowest tier of purity, forbidden even to castes that eat other meat freely. None of these traditions had access to Lindemann's math, Worcester's eagles, or the Four People's prions. They had the flinch. They turned it into scripture, independently, 3 separate times, and arrived at nearly the same list. But the line was never absolute, and that detail explains everything else. Bear still gets eaten, cooked hard enough to be sterile without exception. Lion still gets eaten, almost exclusively during famine, only after every safer option on the landscape is already gone. Squid and octopus, genuinely ferocious, efficient hunters, get eaten constantly, worldwide, with none of this hesitation attached, because they sit low enough